And we are now live with two very famous people. We have Nicholas Agnew, Nick, and we have Maddy Cooke. We call you Maddie. And welcome to the Humans to Mars Summit interview series conducted by myself at Living Maths. And I understand that this is going to be an interesting interview because this is a little bit more of the A in the word STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. We're bringing a little bit of the arts into it. But of course, there will be some science to chat about as well, but nothing too high level. And we also have some...
I hope so.
Well, you know what? You might fall in love with the subject because of this movie. And I think that that's what's so exciting about it. So before we begin with anything, my favorite thing to do is to start off with the backstory. Every superhero has a backstory. And of course, Nick and Maddie, both of you are producers, writers, actors. I mean, you wear many hats. So, and you are color coordinated and
yeah. Silence unintentional today.
Well, for me, it looks the same. But here's the thing. We want to know where it all started, and then we'll lead up to the whole Seat 25 and what it's about and the complexity in terms of filming a movie like that. So we'll start with you, Nick. Where did it all start?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us. It's a real pleasure to be here. Well, filmmaking... Back in school, I was kind of, I was reasonably academic, but music was my thing. I was a musician. I hung out in the music department. I hid there at break times because I was a bit socially awkward. And when I finished high school, I had a place to go to university and study and read English with philosophy. But I took a year's break before doing that. And I had some time to think about what I really wanted to do, and I decided actually performance was where my heart lay, and I ended up applying to drama schools in London to be an actor, and it was a bit of a risk because I hadn't really done much during school, and I got a place at a London drama school, trained there for 4 years because I did an extra short course as well. Left, and then I've been working now as a professional actor for about 10 years. And then back in 2015, Madeline and I were kind of revisiting our love of science together and revisiting our love of storytelling and realizing that we had all this experience and we had the opportunity to apply that to filmmaking and producing. And so without wanting to step on Maddy's backstory too much, that's what we did. And so that brings us up to 2015. We wrote the film. 2016 we shot the film, and here we are, early 2018, getting ready for a release, which is very exciting.
Wow. And we'll be chatting about the release and why I haven't seen it yet and all those sorts of things. And Maddie, what's your backstory?
So similar to Nick, we started out as actors together. We went to drama school together, and that's where we met. Mm-hmm. And we were working. We've done various theatre shows together. We wrote things, but we always knew that we had a film that we wanted to do. We sort of felt like we had it inside us, but it was getting the right opportunity, really. And I think both of our careers were sort of. We were reaching a point where sort of acting, you can very much feel like you're not always in control of your career because you're sort of relying so much on agents and being in the right place at the right time. So we thought, let's really take control now. And we had a daughter together. And I think in a way, having her kind of cemented our feeling of this is what we want to do, strangely enough. And so we as soon as we had her, we got writing. It was like she was our magic thing that we needed. We got writing the film. We got the idea together, and we just did it. So we have her to thank, really.
So if I read the subtitles correctly, it's we had a child, we needed to get some time alone away from her. And we discovered
that might have been it, yeah.
Okay, so now obviously you're both arty people. You spending some time in the movies, TV, which industry? Bit of both.
All of it, really. I mean,
sorry, mainly theatre for me at first, at the beginning, but obviously more film now.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, it's a bit different to the US, where I think you have different hubs. You know, New York is more of a hub for theatre, LA is more of a hub for film and television. Over here, the hub is London, and it's all mixed together. And so, you know, actors, there's no speciality. You take what comes up. I mean, you do get pigeonholed after a while if you do a lot of theatre, which we both suffered with. Not suffered necessarily, but both of us got kind of a lot of theatre work when we first graduated drama school, and it took a while to break out of that. But then I got a bit of a break on the first Kingsman movie, which was when was that? That was shot 2013, because that shot over the period that our daughter was born, which was complicated. But then that led on to a whole load of film work and then some TV work. So yeah, across the board, really, it's all interesting.
I mean, if you think about it, when you are in acting, you're always looking for that big break, that one opportunity that you know is a diving board and leads you into all the other opportunities. And Kingsman was a great movie, by the way. And of course, I thought it was a nice take on the spy genre, but it was done in a very stylish and sophisticated way, almost like making James Bond a real gentleman. but I think that, you know, what happens? Are you still secretly hoping that maybe there's a big blockbuster out there waiting with your name on it? Or
I think we'd like to make it. I think that's
it's sort of that feeling has sort of it is the same, but it's kind of changed, and it's kind of more exciting doing it this way.
Yeah, I think what we came to. People discover different things about themselves at different stages of their life, and one thing that we've come to realize about ourselves is that actually we're far more entrepreneurial than maybe we felt when we graduated from school. So and that being a performer can be a tricky place to be if you have an entrepreneurial spirit. And so that desire to create work for yourself, not all, so I mean, I can only speak for actors, but not all actors have that desire. And I think it doesn't sit well with either of us not being able to create our own work or tell the stories that we want to tell, or have some control over our creative careers. And I think unless you're really lucky as a performer, you know, then you can get stuck in a difficult cycle.
Yeah, and there is quite a lot of there's a lot of things out there that aren't always so high quality, you know, and there is often the pressure to do that kind of work, and so actually being able to do your own thing and take parts that actually you would, you know, are dream positions, and you're sort of able to make that work for yourself is something really nice.
But of course, with that comes the added risk that maybe people don't like what you do, or maybe it's a great idea, but they're just not getting your idea. And you're suddenly thinking, but it started off as a brilliant idea. Why don't they like it? I don't understand. And then you realize that it's about playing to what the audience are used to, not even whether they are willing to climb out of their comfort zone and appreciate something different.
But I think a lot of filmmakers that we've met fairly recently as well we've been touring the US quite a lot, but various other countries with C25, and meeting other filmmakers whose films are, you know, one film in particular is now on a nationwide US theatrical release, and the director of that film we've kept in touch with, and he's had a few really nasty pieces of criticism, you know, really bad reviews, and he's thrilled. He's really pleased, because he said the last thing, and he's completely right. You have to have a thick skin. I think in any profession where you're putting a new idea out, or you're putting something that you've developed and you've created, someone always wants to knock you down for that, and that's often due to their own insecurities and their own failings. And so there has to be, you have to develop a bit of a thick skin, and you have to know what you think is right and pursue that. But also as a sort of as a creative person, and I think this probably goes for the sciences as well, is that if you have a new idea that you want to put out there, the last thing you want is for it to be bland and insipid and no one to have an opinion about it. If you can have, you don't necessarily want to polarize people, but if you can have the good along with the band, at least you've sparked a conversation, and something is more likely to happen as a result of it, rather than it coming and going and meaning nothing to anyone. And so, yeah, seeing criticism and negative feedback in a positive way, and also it's the only way you learn as well. Yeah. You can't cater for everybody in the arts all the time, but you can accept less than positive feedback and say, well, how can I make the next thing better? Or how could I communicate that idea more clearly? Or, you know, did I really put enough effort in there? If I'm honest with myself.
Absolutely. But we try and not write sort of people pleasers in a way, because as you say, you can't please everyone. We sort of try and write with a kind of niche audience in mind. You know, what would a particular group of people like to see? What kind of things would we like to see? What would our friends like to see? And then kind of go from there. And yeah, you can't possibly please everyone. So.
And moving from stage to movie, I mean, when you're acting, it's one thing being behind the cameras, but when you're directing and you're on the other side of the camera, there's almost this perception that you have to have, and I'm not going to say that you have to have a holier than thou attitude, because who are you to know that that's the best way to do it? Because some of these actors might say to you, listen, I've been doing this for quite a while and you're telling me how to do it. So how do you balance that when you're giving, especially if you happen to know the leading lady and you're directing her in a movie?
I'm just always right.
I have to go home with that person.
No, Nick knows I'm right. He's
okay.
Wrong.
Okay. Well, there we go. So that makes your life a lot easier.
No, I think you were quite good at sort of managing a situation, and Nick's very good at being able to sort of assess, you know, how he needs to speak to various people and moving around the room. And
well, and also you're not always right. No one is, you know, everyone, contrary to popular belief, actually, our experience of you know, the film industry and the acting world is that egos don't get you very far. But, you know, you hear about people who have egos, and the reason that you hear about them is because they're the exception rather than the rule, because particularly filmmaking is a collaborative process. You really rely on input from every single member of the team, and so when an actor says, oh, I feel like it should work this way, then that information is really valuable to me as a director, and will inform how we set up the shot. If it's not possible to fulfill the actor's wishes, then you have a polite conversation, and the actor, you know, will invariably get it, and they'll go, okay, well, how can we make this work? And that's how the industry functions, because if people didn't behave like that, then nothing would get done, and money would be splashed up the wall, and you know, there's and any tensions that do arise, and they make it to the press, you know, you can kind of see why, because the amounts of money that are involved in making a film or putting on a show and playing it on Broadway or in the West End, they're big amounts of money, and so when people don't pull together, you can see how there's potential there for a clash.
Of course. And I mean, at the end of the day, you know, you want to put on a good show and a good performance, and you want to make sure that you get the most out of your actors and actresses, and you know, you want to make sure that your movie's right. But then you are a director and a producer and a co-writer. How do you reconcile all three of those roles? And maybe just for the kids out there, what is the difference between a producer and a director?
Well, that's a really good question. So a producer is the person who is responsible for making the film, the TV show, the theatre production, whatever it is. They're the people who go, I want to tell this story. I want to use this person to write the script. I want to use this person to direct it. And they're responsible from start to finish for seeing it through.
They really put everything together.
They produce. If you think of a movie as being a product in the same way that shampoo is a product on the shelves in the supermarket, you think of it that way. The producer is the girl or guy who says, I want to make a new brand of shampoo, and they pull the whole team together to make it, whether they design the label, design the bottle, come up with the contents, and then they see it, and then they're the ones who are pitching it to the supermarkets and trying to get it on the shelf. That's the same as the producer. The director is, if they're separate, because sometimes the director and the producer is the same person, but if they're separate, the director will have been brought on board by the producer. The producer will have thought about the kind of movie that they want to make. They'll have looked at the different directors and their work, and they'd have said, okay, I like that director's work. They have a similar feel to the kind of movie that this is going to be, and they bring them on. And then the director has a large say in the artistic vision of the film. And this is where the lines cross when production starts. So for the 6 weeks or the 3 months or whatever it is that it takes to actually film your movie, the director is in charge of what the camera is looking at and everything else that informs what's in front of the camera. The producer is there to release money, to make sure the production is running smoothly around the director. But really, the director should have the greatest creative control. And then when you've shot the film and you go and you edit the film, again, the director, in an ideal world, should have the creative control over what the film looks like, because that's why the producer employs the director. It doesn't always work like that, because when there's money involved, the producer kind of has to.
I was going to say, in an ideal world, doesn't always happen that way. So now I want to just find out if there's anyone in Mr. Soskill's class that would like to ask any questions, because they get to eat lunch and sit there during their break or their recess, and they get to watch the interview. Is there anyone that would like to know anything about the movie industry? Okay.
Questions? Yes, go ahead, Evan.
How long did it take to make the movie?
How long did it take to make C25?
Good question. Because we wrote it as well, it took longer than usual. So it took us 6 months to write the script. And then we shot very, very quickly. We shot the whole film in just 24 days. So just under a month. Although what was unusual about this film is we split the filming up. Ordinarily, you would film in one big chunk, but we split it up over a period of a couple of months. So we filmed a couple of days, had a couple of days break, filmed another couple of days, and had another couple of days break.
Nice.
And then, so we finished the film. Then the edit took, I suppose, about 3 months, including any visual effects that we added in. So yeah, to cut the film together.
Kind of about 9 months then, I guess.
Yeah.
Total.
So we boshed it out pretty quickly.
Sure, that's impressive.
But that's because we were working with a lower budget. You know, we didn't have the Hollywood budget, and so the more money you have, the more time you can spend. But that doesn't always lead to better results.
I was going to say, let's see, maybe there's someone else in the class who's got another question. Mr. Soskill, has anyone else got a question?
Yeah, sorry, I had muted. She was asking. Go ahead, try again, guys.
How many people is there in the movie?
About how many people are in the movie?
How many people?
Oh, that's a. You know what? I'm not 100%. How many people are in our movie?
We've got we have 8 principal cast members. So those are people with big parts, and then we have around 20 smaller parts. Sometimes those characters will speak, and sometimes they won't speak, but they're there and they're important characters. And then we have a few other background artists or extras as well.
So quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
And obviously the producer and the director would need to, well, the producer would need to keep track of all those people so that the director could get to do the work and focus on the look and the feel of the movie.
Absolutely. I mean, on an ordinary film set, you have the producer who's kind of around and making sure things happen smoothly. You have the director, and then you have the first assistant director. And really, it's that girl or guy's job to marshal everything. They're the channel of communication between the director and everybody else. Because you can imagine on a film set, you have the gaffer who's in charge of lighting and electrics, and you have all the actors, and then you have the producer, and you have all these different departments. And if they all had a question at the same time, the director would never get to look at the screen and see what they were filming. So the first assistant director is they kind of run the set.
Wow. And in terms of a movie, you know, you hear about these budgets that they have for some of the Hollywood movies, which are absolutely insane. But then these movies go on to make, I mean, the Black Panther made billions and billions of dollars. So from an entrepreneurial point of view, a good movie makes money. A niche movie is a little bit harder to sell unless it's, you know.
Well, actually, it's kind of the opposite. The reason that the big studios, so Disney or Warner Brothers, have to spend so much money on their films is because they want their films to appeal to everybody. And if you want your film to appeal to everybody, everybody has to know about your film, and there has to be something in that film for everybody. And you know, when you go to the cinema, what you like to see are action, explosions, comedy, you know, all these things, which cost a lot of money. And so a small film can't possibly afford to have those things in their film and then reach the audience. The larger, when you see, you know, a budget for a movie of $100 million, at least half of that is being spent on advertising. So just making sure people know about the film. And where if you have a niche audience, then you're making a film that appeals to a group of people that already have an interest in something, which is what we did with 625.
I see that Mrs. Soskell's class has to leave in 4 minutes, so maybe they've got some questions before they rush out.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matthew.
How many mistakes did you make?
Sorry, we didn't quite hear that.
How many mistakes did you make?
How many mistakes did you make? That's a very good question.
Millions.
A lot.
Millions.
Yeah, there was a lot of editing. Unfortunately, we had a wonderful editor who could take out a lot of our mistakes that we made and sort of make everything look beautiful at the end.
We had people.
What kind of mistakes are you referring to? Like what sort of mistakes?
Well, you have mistakes in the film where someone for one take they have a mug in their hand, and then the next minute they put it down and forgotten to pick it out.
Sort of costume problems.
When the film is released later this year, there's one to look out for. Maddy's character, the lead character, is wearing tights in 1 second, black tights, and then the next time you see her, she's not wearing them.
Yes, and that one we couldn't actually remove. It was impossible because we couldn't refilm in that particular location. So fortunately, most people don't notice. But
but that's our one mistake, which is still in the film. But yeah, people laugh, or they get their lines wrong, or you think you turn the camera over, which is cool, which is what happens when you turn the camera on and it's running and the actor starts and you haven't called action and there's no sound and you have to start again, and you know.
And obviously you had those clapper boards, those ones that you go and action and you write things in chalk. I mean, what is the purpose of all of that? A lot of kids see that in movies, but they don't actually understand what the purpose of that is.
Well, that's
it's very important in post, obviously, for the editor to know exactly where he was and what he's looking at, so he knows the particular shot he was on, the time it was, the day it was. So that is highly important.
And the actual clap, this bit that does this, is because the sound is recorded on a different device to the video. And so when you come afterwards, you have to put the sound and the video together. Yeah. And when you see the board close and you hear the clap, it means your sound and your video are all lined up.
So sometimes you don't even have to use a clapper. You can just do that.
But you see, this is, I mean, fascinating. A lot of people don't really realize all these things. So let's get on to this movie, Seat 25. Now, I'm going to hazard a guess here, and this is just pure speculation, that a certain project called Mars One might have inspired this movie. Would I be correct in saying so?
Yes, certainly. I mean, Mars One was a big influence, and along with other things, but certainly the competition that they were running at one stage to sort of get people, ordinary people, involved. You know, we heard a lot about that, and we were very inspired by it. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not a story about Mars One.
No, of course not.
But the interesting thing that happened with Mars One is in the UK there was a newspaper. They put her in a space suit with high heels on and said she wanted to be the first person to have Martian babies, which she may have said in the interview, but of course was not the truth.
Very sad.
But it got us thinking, and it's tragic, and it prompted us to say, well, this isn't how you should communicate these incredible endeavors. This is not what people need to be seeing. What they need to be seeing is how life-changing it would be, all of the exciting possibilities that this could bring. So we decided that, yeah, it upset us a little bit, that article, and so it was one of our driving factors for creating this story.
That's incredible. I mean, I've met two of the South African candidates that have been shortlisted for the Mars One project, and I mean, one in particular, Adriana Marais, is, you know, a doctoral student. She is incredibly intelligent. She's got everything going for her. I mean, you know, if you were looking for the epitome of someone who was on the right trajectory for success in life, this is the person that you would put forward. And then, you know, how do you reconcile that she would choose to go on a one-way mission to Mars and give all of that up? I mean, I struggle to even fathom that, but your character in the movie is looking to start settling down and merely entered this just to see what would happen. But secretly, you don't enter something hoping that it might not happen.
No.
That you wouldn't have entered it.
No. But that was it, that very question, and you're right, that was what was sort of baffling us. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about why would you go forever? Why would you choose this one-way ticket? You know, you're never going to come home, you're never going to get to see your family again. So what type of person would choose to apply? And you're right, I mean, Faye, the central character, she does want to win. She wants to win, but yet she's obviously scared, and all that comes through in the film. And she goes, and the film is really, you find out that she's won pretty early on, and then really the film is about her decision whether or not she's going to take up the offer and finally go. So, and she's got to break the news to everyone through the film as well, and it's much to the surprise of her, you know, her husband and her family and her friends and her work, and she looks on the outside like she's got quite a good life going on, really, but she isn't happy. She obviously isn't happy, and so and also she wants more. She wants more than this. She wants more than what she's been dealt, you know. So she's searching for something exciting and a new venture.
And also, you mentioned, you don't enter something like that without and not want to win.
Correct. It's not a lottery. I mean, a lottery, you enter and you think, well, maybe I'll win, maybe I won't win.
Yeah.
But if you do win, it will be great. But this is a different situation.
But I do think, I mean, something that we address quite early in the film is this idea of Faye, who's our lead character, is someone who grew up having a passion for science and wanted to be a scientist and had all these ambitions, and partly through her own fault, partly through social pressures, she hasn't achieved these things, and she's found herself in a place that she doesn't want to be. And actually, she enters this competition, which is a long shot. In our film, lots of people want this, and so she knows that the odds against winning are stacked against her. And so, in that sense, it may be that when she entered, she didn't want to win, but what she wanted to do is go through the process of rekindling and rediscovering those passions. And the fact she does win comes as a huge shock to her. I mean, we're not giving anything away by saying she wins the ticket.
Of course, no spoiler alerts.
It happens right at the beginning, and whether or not she decides to go then is the journey. But yeah, I think there's something to be said for sometimes just going through the process of filling out an application form, whether it be a metaphorical application form or a literal application form, going through the process of reassessing your priorities and actually what you love. And for young people, they've got they're faced with so many choices and so many options, and what should I do at college, or what subjects should I take? Here in the UK, when you reach 14, 15, you have to decide which subjects to specialize in. And it can be overwhelming, and you can have adults and pressures from outside making you make these decisions, and sometimes it's important to reassess and say, what's important to me, where do my passions lie, and not being ashamed of that. And that if you have a love of mathematics, or you have a love of science, or you have a love of music, that first of all, these things aren't mutually exclusive, and secondly, just because somebody else tells you what you should and shouldn't be doing, take their advice, of course, but sometimes you have to be true to yourself, and pressure from your peers. If you're big into science, then just because your mates are all out playing football or whatever doesn't mean that that's the right thing to be doing. You have to be true to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you do realize that this video is just full of so many life lessons, and the metaphor that you can apply to everything in life is that, I mean, I always think of the reality that we only live one life.
Exactly.
So why would you want to spend your life doing something that you don't enjoy? That makes no sense to me. I understand that from a logistic point of view, it puts bread on the table and it allows you to facilitate, the process of living. But at the end of the day, if you're not happy, then that's probably why you are buying tickets to go and fly to Mars, because you're trying to tell yourself and the rest of the people out there that I have greater ambitions. I really want to do something more with myself.
And your life as an individual has a meaning. Just because there are many, many, many other people populating this planet doesn't mean that every individual life is valuable. And it would be a horrendous thing to think that anyone had decided that their life, just had to be whatever society dealt them, or whatever they've ended up stuck in. If someone feels stuck in a position, if you're stuck in a job, that you feel that, well, that's my lot. I mean, that's a tragedy that people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how much homework does one have to do with regards to Mars and the actual reality of going there, etc.? Because obviously, if someone's going to fly there, then you would need to know something about the flying times and how we would actually get this. So how much homework do you have to do?
Well, quite a lot. I mean, research is so important, because you can't write a good story and a truthful story if you kind of only know half the facts. And so, I wouldn't claim to be, and I'm sure Madeline wouldn't claim to be an expert.
No.
But the mission that, or the kind of plan that inspired us was Robert Zubrin's Mars Direct plan. We read his books, and we thought that is a neat way of getting our character to Mars. We don't reference it in the film, but it informs how, so that we know what the process would be.
Which kind of gives you the confidence as well to write it, even if it's not necessarily in there. It's, you know, it's not in the script, and it's not what we wanted to show, but it gives you the confidence really to write what you want to write when you feel that you have all the facts.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you can't please everyone all the time, but the purists out there will go, "Oh, please, that's not a Mars movie. They had dust storms that were doing this, and that doesn't even happen." You know, you're always going to get someone who looks to critique it from a scientific point of view.
Yeah, and we did a science festival back in Brighton a little while ago. That there was a lot of scientists there, and we did have some fierce
some difficult questions.
And we aren't scientists, so we sort of tried to answer them as much as we could, but it is just it's art, and we didn't have a huge budget. We couldn't really film in Mars, you know, so really it's our ideas, and you really do the best with what you can and your budget, and but most people, I think, feel that it, you know, that we did a good job. I feel you know, seeing what we had and the budget we had, and sort of it seems believable.
I think you have to be true to your primary objective. You know, why do you make a film? And so, you know, The Martian, which is a tremendous film, I guess is probably the film you were referencing with the dust storm that wasn't, you know, couldn't have happened.
There's dust all over. Everyone talks about the dust, and an interview that I did with John Connolly last week from NASA was saying that the dust is so fine on Mars that if there was a dust storm, it would basically look like a cloud. You wouldn't actually have that sort of dust storm coming over and knocking your equipment over.
The same thing, and that actually even high winds, which on Earth would knock you off your feet, wouldn't really be enough to move your hair. And so that's true. Did it detract from the film? No, because the overall message of the film was portraying the real life potential for colonizing Mars and how a human being would survive on the planet. And what it did was inspire huge numbers of people to look into Mars and to look forward to the day that humans are going to step foot on Mars. And so if that's the overall objective, then the artistic license that you say, there is a limit with the amount of artistic license you can take, of course. But in order to get Mark Watney stranded on Mars, I think that small white lie with the science was far outweighed by the benefit of the rest of the film.
No, you're always going to have a trade-off. Make a decision. Let's do it. It works.
There are some films that you don't. I mean but they're few and far between. In order to tell a story and deliver a message, we're currently, you know, financing our next film, and we're looking at a story based around alternate dimensions and string theory, and you know, how to tell that and have human consciousness moving, being able to see time objectively, you know, without the past being behind and the future, and being able to do that. We can't show a movie which is just mathematics scrolling up the screen. You know, you have to you have to visually interpret it. And so our next film is a challenge, and we're trying not to take license with the underpinning maths and the science, but equally, in order to communicate an idea to a public who may not be familiar with a concept, it's storytelling. You have to tell it.
Unfortunately, no one knows what that would be like to experience.
Correct. So you've got a little bit of space to work.
We do have a little bit, and so it's about our interpretation, which is what Seat 25 was, our interpretation. But the next film, you know, even more so, is really, you know, what's going on. What do we feel in our minds? How would be the best way to sort of communicate that to everyone?
That is fascinating. I mean, you do realize that by admission of your next movie, etc., and all the other little ditties that you've been sharing with us, you've actually proclaimed that you are both scientists, because to propose a movie and then to test out things and then see what works, what doesn't work, this is what scientists do. It doesn't have to involve chemicals. So you are technically scientists. And the fact that you're choosing Mars and now string theory, I think you are closet scientists, and you're not. You haven't come out yet, but it's happening. Scientists. It's happening.
I'm thrilled that you think so, because I often question when it was that science and the arts became two separate things. Because if you look back at the Romantic poets of the 19th century, it certainly in Britain, they were scientists, and yet they were artists, and the poetry they wrote was an expression of their desire to communicate the way the world around them worked. And at what point did Einstein's imagination and creative thinking get compartmentalized into, this is an arts subject and this is a science subject and this is mathematics? And I think it's a shame, because one of the things that we address in our new film is we have a sequence where we have this brilliant young student who comes from a difficult background, and she loves physics, and she explains to her boyfriend why she loves working out mathematical equations, and it's a visual representation of the images that she has in her head. And I just think it's so important that arts and science and engineering and math, they're not kept separate, because innovation and new ideas don't come without creative and artistic thinking.
The two are inseparable. In fact, what is fascinating is, if you ever get the chance, I think he's actually based in the UK, Daniel Tamlet. He is a savant. And someone who's a savant is born generally on the spectrum, but they have incredible abilities in certain fields. Some are artistic, some are numerical. He can pick up languages very quickly, but mathematically, he's unbelievable. And when you watch videos about him, he'll be the first to tell you that he has what is known as synesthesia. And when he thinks about numbers, they have a personality, they have a smell, they have a color, they have a texture. So when you give him a maths problem, he doesn't think of it in the standard maths technique that we would use to solve it. The answers come to him, and it's through a whole mix of emotions and feelings, and that you can't even articulate that in picture form or on a movie set. You could never do that. It's the way his brain processes
so cool.
that. I think
like
so.
a new film. It sounds like a film, doesn't it?
Well, another interesting guy that I interviewed is Derek Amato. He became a savant by getting what they call acquired savant syndrome. He goes playing with his mates in the garden. They throw the ball. He dives to catch it, and he hits his head in the shallow end of the pool. And after about 5 days of quite a heavy headache, whatever, that went away. And then he was proficient in playing any instrument he wants to play. Wow. He could just play instruments. So that accident switched on a part of his brain. Mm. Now, I asked him what would happen if doctors could replicate that in a medical setting where we could just switch people's brains on and they could become artistic or mathematical or musically talented just like this. Mm. Are you thinking about your next movie? Yeah.
Yes. You've sorted it.
Although I think if we did that movie, we'd have to look at the implications of creating us as, modifying the human species,
Well, this is and then so C25 obviously has certain ethical questions. What about the fact that we're sending people on a one-way mission knowing that there is an 80 to 90% chance they're going to die because we don't have the technology to actually get them there? It's too soon. We haven't done enough experimentation where we've sent people there and back, or we've done enough to bring things back to show that it can be done. there's a certain ethical question that one has to ask who would organize any competition like that would allow that to happen?
I mean, the thing is, my response to that is that we do it all the time. You know, we wage wars, and we send citizens of different nations to fire weapons at each other. I would far rather our collective human desire to expand was done in a more kind of constructive manner. People explore all the time, and it fails, and we've done it throughout history as well. When is it that we decided to play it safe all the time in the wrong areas? We play, you know, it's a shame. It's a shame, and also there's this idea that why don't, you know, to be controversial, you could send a spaceship full of smokers to Mars, and actually you'd be reducing their risk of cancer. So we do all sorts of things to ourselves that don't benefit anybody else. So why not do something that will benefit other people?
Absolutely.
And inspire? And also there's the ethical thing that people are saying, you know, it's selfish. What does it benefit the ordinary person? Yeah, and with Elon Musk as well at the moment, and SpaceX and the Falcon Heavy, we've heard a lot about, oh, it's a billionaire's game.
You know, why isn't he feeding people who are starving instead? Or
which of course it just doesn't work like that. The world doesn't work like that. You know,
the world doesn't work like that.
Elon Musk hasn't just shot however many $1 billion in cash into space. You know, he's paid people's wages, he's invested in the economy, he's, you know, come up with new technology. And I wish that these were ideas that were communicated rather than sensationalist reporting that is always trying to put a negative spin on things.
Of course. So, I mean, if I think about a movie like C25, right now Mars is trending from a movie genre point of view, and everyone's bringing their own take on it. If there was a seat 26 and 27, would you take those tickets?
Would there be one?
Did you see it? You should have seen your faces. I don't know, Maddie, you were like, answer, because this is not a movie now. This is real.
This is real. Are you talking about a one-way mission here, or
one-way mission? You know the drill. Seat 25. We're now giving you seat 26 and 27. You could go together.
I really want to say yes. I want to say yes, I'd go, but I don't know. I don't know. If I could bring my daughter, then
I think, yeah, if you could have seat 26, 27 and 28, and we could relocate as a family.
Yes, relocate, whole family.
I think it would be a tough one to turn down. I mean, there's so many things that you would miss here on Earth, and one of the things that I would love to experience is what so many astronauts say, which is when you come, particularly astronauts who were lucky enough to step foot on the moon, they come back and they say you have such an appreciation for the green and the blue and weather and rain. I would love to have that appreciation given to me, which would mean coming back. But equally, the idea of being on a place where you can look back across the cosmos and see Earth in the distance, and everybody that ever was, ever has been, every achievement, every dream, every hope is there, and you know that you're amongst the first people to be here. That would be an extraordinary place to be.
I'm not sure if you'd be able to see Earth other than a tiny little dot.
With my telescope. I don't mean you'd be able to see everybody.
But in principle, absolutely, you might have a very sophisticated telescope that allows you to do that. I mean, when I asked Adriana, you know, why one-way mission? I mean, you could die there. She said, look, we're going to die at some point. And if I could be the first person to die on Mars, that would be a big deal. I mean, I just know that if there were 3 people who were flying to Mars, that, you know, if you think about Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins. You know, Michael Collins continued flying the lunar module, whatever, around the moon, and Buzz and Neil landed on the moon, and of course Neil gets to go first, and Buzz will tell you, he'll be the first to tell you, and you'll probably get to meet him at the Humans to Mars Summit as well. He'll be the first to tell you that you know, for all his life he was never known as Buzz Aldrin. It was always Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon. And it affected him. I mean, he's written books about it, and there was deep depression about it. So I could just imagine the first person about to step on Mars and someone just pushing them out of the way just to get their first to say, I was the first. I can just imagine the two of you. No, we're going to do this in a civilized way. And you can see the hands and the faces rushing down. And then your dog jumps out first. And she lands.
It would make a good comedy.
It would make a good scene. It reminds me, that's the sort of thing you'd see in a movie like Spaceballs.
And then what would you say if you were the first person to land on Mars? You'd have to come up with some sort of catchphrase that would become eternal. What would it be?
Well, I agree with you. The pressure after Neil Armstrong to say something profound in a moment like that.
I reckon he thought of that before, though.
Oh yeah, no doubt. But I mean, even so, you've got 9 months, you know, flying out there. Imagine the writer's block that you've got as you hurtle through space, thinking, what am I going to say when I step foot on the red planet?
I mean, you're a writer. Both of you are writers. You know that to come up with the right words to articulate exactly how you're feeling and the moment. That's a really tough thing to come up with a poignant saying that he's just going to nail it.
Yeah, I mean, the line, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, it was a work of genius, but also I wonder if you could say anything like that again, because that was the moment humankind stepped off planet onto another celestial body for the first time. That moment will never come again. So to try and recreate that moment may be the wrong thing to do. Maybe you just need to be true to your feelings, and maybe it needs to be more emotional and less crafted. Maybe it needs to be...
I suspect it will be filled with expletives. That's just my gut feeling.
I would imagine so.
So now, you guys, obviously, your movie is coming out soon, because it says coming soon on the poster behind you.
Soon.
When is it coming out?
It's coming. So we have a North American release in the fall. So the US and Canada is coming in the fall. We will be releasing the actual date at the Humans to Mars Summit. So it's enjoy your summer, and then we'll be available. Is basically the message. Is
the movie already ready?
The movie's ready, and actually, I mean, anybody who's in the Washington, D.C. vicinity can come and see the film at the Humans to Mars Summit. It will be screening. We've been screening at international film festivals for the last 12 months. You know, getting a film distributed is a whole game in itself, and so it's time consuming. But we're locked in now for autumn or fall.
October.
Yeah, so it'd be October, but the exact date is just being polished off because the Americans have got Thanksgiving around that time. So we're just but there will be news we're screening on the 8th of May at the Humans to Mars Summit. So by the 8th of May, we'll have dates available.
And when can we expect South Africa?
South Africa, well, all being well, it will be the same time. We're trying to coordinate it so that at least you know, DVD and online is available around that time.
So like Amazon, iTunes, Google Play,
Netflix.
Well, Netflix is an interesting one. They seem to be taking over the world.
I was going to say.
And they're offering, what they're doing is they are revolutionizing the film distribution industry, and arguably the whole industry, the making of the films and the selling of the films. There's some things to iron out, but really they're offering potentially a really exciting time for particularly the independent film market, who are trying to get their movies seen. But what they do is, without wanting to get too boring, you don't want to go in an ideal world and let Netflix don't release the figures, but they offer you an amount of money for your movie.
Yeah.
And in an ideal world, it's a good amount. But if it's not quite, then you need to sell it in other places beforehand, before you go to Netflix, because they're exclusive. So, yeah, I mean, interesting times ahead. And
talk about them saying that certain actors were saying maybe we shouldn't allow Netflix to have their movies win awards at things like the Academy Awards, because it's not the same as a regular movie in the movie houses.
Well, I mean, I think it's viewing habits are changing, and going to a theater or a cinema to see a movie is such a unique experience, and certainly something we wouldn't want to see disappear.
Yeah.
But equally, you can't ignore the audience. The audience has to tell you where they want to see it, and with new technology, home entertainment. And so in that sense, I don't think Netflix should be excluded from the Academy Awards. There was some difficulty at Cannes Film Festival in France with Netflix. I think it was last year. And I get that the French have this, the Americans have their film industry and are protective of it, and rightfully so, because it's a powerhouse internationally. Now, the French have their own film industry, which they're quite protective of as well. And again, rightly so. And they have quotas for French language films that have to be in the cinemas and have to have a cinema release, which chip away at the Hollywood presence. And so the film festival in France, Cannes Film Festival, I can understand why they're protective of their theatrical industry. And I certainly wish we had a little bit more of that in the UK. So I think different countries around the world have a right to be protective of their industry, because
think South Africa is like that as well. They're good at protecting the arts, I believe.
But it is important because for diversity of voice and diversity of opinion, and yes, but Netflix does offer huge opportunities as well. I would hate to think that Netflix were embargoed or boycotted, because they offer something new.
I mean, they could just create a new category for movies made by internet channels, and that would certainly appease everyone. But
Absolutely.
Now, your movie, you have been traveling festivals, and people have liked what they've seen. In fact, you've won a few awards.
Yeah, Madeline's won how many Best Actor awards?
I won 2.
That is pretty impressive.
It's great. Nice. And the film picked up 6 awards for Best Film at various festivals.
And other sort of cinematography awards, and writing. We were sort of been blown away, and it's been really, really lovely.
It's been a tremendous run, and it means a huge amount when people who are film fans value your film, or if they didn't like your film, articulate to you why, because all of those experiences help you grow and make better content.
I mean, I think that must be the best feather in your cap when you go to these film festivals, and then they call out your name and say, Best Actress, great writing, amazing cinematography, and you sit there going, they really like this stuff. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Well, as well, it feels so distant. I mean, there are some film sets that are nice to be on, of course, but film is only glamorous once the film is made, the film industry. When you're making the film, it's not particularly glamorous. And so to go from, we know how the film was made, and we know all of the problems and everything that went wrong, and all of the battles that we had, and all of the arguments and the tears and everything that happened.
Everyone goes through that when they make movies.
Yeah, and I think, but any team will go through that.
Yeah.
That creates something that goes on to have success, they'll have had the dirty bits. And then
you start to forget all the dirty bits.
Of course.
And then you just start thinking, oh, it's incredible.
Let's go make a movie about string theory.
Well,
We'll
exactly.
never argue.
Exactly.
That is so funny. Well,
But you're right. I mean, especially when you being entrepreneurial filmmakers. I mean, that's how we see ourselves, because we see things from beginning to end. That knowing that you conceived that this idea has gone from being no more than a thought in your head to exactly that. You know, you're lucky enough to be invited up to a stage to receive an award in acknowledgement of your work is tremendously special.
Who pays to send you to all these film festivals? Is that part of your budget?
Some of it was part of our budget, and we have been lucky enough. Towards the end of the run, we got some really nice festivals, and they paid for us to come out there, which was
that's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah. You kind of over time you become more valuable.
Yes, you do. Yeah, which is.
But yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, and at the beginning we had, I mean, just in order to get your film into these festivals, you have to pay a submission fee. You know, everyone's on an even footing, whether you've got a $10 million independent film or a film like ours shot for tens of thousands of dollars. You all have to pay $90 to submit your film, and then it's considered. And that in itself, you know, that racks up, you know, because you want to enter a wide variety. And then, yeah, you have to pick, once you start becoming accepted to the festivals, you have to make that difficult decision about which ones you can attend and which ones you can't, and how much the budget of the film allows attendance. And
but you've got to spend money to make money. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah.
And as entrepreneurs, you'd obviously see it that way. So now you are going to be at the Humans to Mars Summit. Is it now confirmed?
Yes, confirmed as of today.
Because I was speaking to the team behind the team, and there was a little bit of back and forth, but now it is happening.
That's right. Yeah, I was on a call with them, with the Humans to Mars guys, just before we spoke, actually. So
awesome. And what are you going to be doing there?
So obviously they're going to be showing the film, and then I believe we're going to be talking about it afterwards, answering a few questions, and we're speakers at the festival, at the summit.
So there's a panel running after the screening. We'll be there before the screening to meet anybody who wants to talk to us, and then afterwards there's this formal question and answer session and a panel, and we're hoping that there will be a couple of other speakers from the other 3 days around C25 who are going to join us to bring their scientific expertise to the table.
Awesome.
Along with the creative process. Yeah.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Unfortunately, I won't be there for the summit because I'm based here in Cape Town, but I will be in the States in July for a conference, and maybe next year we'll plan for a visit, and hopefully your string theory could even be something that features there.
I hope so. That would be tremendous.
What is your advice that you would give young people who are foolish enough to start out in this industry and are looking to become blockbuster directors and actresses? And what advice would you give them just to keep their feet on the ground?
I've got two things that I would say is, firstly, don't ask for permission. Don't wait for anybody to tell you that you can do it. Now more than ever, you can make a film for nothing. You can pick up your iPhone or your Android phone and you can make a movie. In fact, people have done that, and those films have gone on to have cinema releases. There's nothing to stop you nowadays, so don't wait for permission, and don't believe that you have to do it the way other people have done. So don't ask for permission, and always ask for help. As someone who helped us a lot, her name is Marta Escatet. So if she's watching this, hello Marta. She lives in Miami. She got in touch with us while we were making the film and has offered us a huge amount of her expertise. Said you have your no. Until you ask, you have the answer no. And I would be delighted for people to get in touch with me and say, can you help? Or can I pick your brains? Have you got some advice? And I think that's something that people are often afraid to do. And I think people are more willing to help than you might think. So don't ask for permission, and always ask for help if you want it.
That's a good one.
Brilliant advice.
Yes, I mean, I was just going to say as well, sort of, there are so many avenues now for putting up a film as a young person. I think just starting small blogging things, sort of vlogging, sorry, on YouTube, sort of go out there, film things, put it on YouTube for free, and sort of begin to then learn what you like doing, what you're good at. And then you can slowly develop a little team, doing a few maybe shorts on YouTube. You can do it pretty much for free at first.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was an outstanding piece of advice from both of you. Hopefully those of you that are aspiring actors, writers, directors, I know we have people who are watching this live from around the world, so thank you for joining us as well. We would like to thank Maddie and Nick for an incredibly informative interview. I am eagerly awaiting the opportunity to see C25 because, as I said, I know people who are doing something similar. That's if they ever get to do it. And because I work with the Humans to Mars Summit people, it is something that is quite close to my heart, and I'm very excited to see this award-winning movie that was done with low budget, with no permission, with lots of and started off in the very basics of YouTube and humble beginnings, and turned out to be this incredible movie that everyone else says it is, especially from the film festivals.
I should say actually that if people want to be kept up to date with the release details, we are of course on Facebook. Put in C25. We're on Twitter. We have a website, c25.com. So just follow us, give us a like, send us a message if you want to say hello. We'd love to hear from you, and that way you'll be kept completely up to date with our news, any screenings before our release, and any extra little tidbits that you may want to see. We often release little videos of behind the scenes things and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. So the last thing we're going to do is we ask you to come a little bit closer together and smile at the camera, and I'm going to take a screenshot. So you're going to look at the actual camera on the computer. Yeah. I think Maddie, you're looking at the screen.
Sorry, where is
you look at the camera. There we go. That's it. Okay, we got a big smile. Nick, is that your real smile? No, I'm joking. Oh, these are lovely. Perfect. And I'm going to stop the broadcast over here. And